Today is Tuesday, Parashat Metzora. Next week, Friday night is Pesach, and we're all getting ready for the holiday. One of the things that we do is we clean the house from any Chametz. And if we were to keep any Chametz, we're not allowed to own it during the holiday of Pesach. The idea is to close it within a certain area that will not be easily accessible on Pesach for the person. In other words, a separate room or a separate closet. And the contents that have Chametz should be sold to a goy before Pesach begins. So it is not in our possession during Pesach. We can, after Pesach is finished, own back that Chametz. But during the holiday of Pesach, any Chametz that is owned by a Jew becomes forbidden to benefit from after Pesach. In other words, you had a bottle of, let's say, of scotch that is Chametz, and you did not sell it before Pesach began. After Pesach, you'll be forbidden to benefit, to use that bottle of scotch, because it begins asur behana'ah, which means asur to benefit from. But the idea of Chametz is, as we search for the Chametz, and as we get rid of it and burn whatever Chametz that we burn on the eve of Pesach, we have in mind that we're getting rid not just of the Chametz, but what Chametz represents. Chametz represents haughtiness. The matzah is flat, it's humility. Chametz is haughtiness, is anger, is negative emotions, that it's ego, it's selfishness. It's the idea that the same way that the Chametz rises when a person is conceited, is haughty, that also is Chametz. And as we search for the Chametz in the house, it should be an exercise for us to also search within ourselves. What is the quote-unquote Chametz? The bad character traits, the anger, the negative emotions that we are to get rid of also, just like we get rid of the Chametz. So the physical search for Chametz is in a way a training for the spiritual search for our own personal Chametz to get rid of. And it definitely is a propitious time to do that, because Pesach is Zman Cherutenu, the time of our freedom, and this is the time that we get free, not just from the Egyptian slavery, but also free from the shackles of any addictions or any type of behaviors that we try to get rid of, and from the idea that Metzora sometimes gets us to do things. During this period, we train ourselves to get rid of the bad influence of the evil inclination of the Metzora. So that's the idea of searching for the Chametz and burning the Chametz. Just like we burn it, we get rid also, and we have a chance to be free from all those aspects that a person should be free from. And then we are to eat matzah. Now, the obligation to eat matzah is really, the mitzvah is only on the first night, and in the diaspora, first and second night of Pesach. So that if someone wanted not to eat matzah throughout the whole of Pesach, he's allowed. He cannot eat bread. He could just avoid any of such food. I mean, some people have a hard time with the matzah, but the first night of Pesach and the second night in the diaspora is a mitzvah to eat a certain amount of matzah, kazait of matzah, to fulfill the obligation of achilat matzah. And that's why we say, not only hamotzi lechem min haaretz, but we say also bracha, that Hashem commanded us al achilat matzah, on eating matzah. The eating of matzah on the night of Pesach is something that is meaningful, and therefore, on the day that precedes Pesach, on the eve of Pesach, we're not to eat any matzah, so that we keep the appetite for that matzah that is eaten as a mitzvah. On the eve of Pesach, you can eat matzah ashira, which is matzah that has with it some fruit juices, that has sweet matzah. With that type of matzah, you cannot fulfill the obligation of eating matzah on the night of Pesach, and that's why it's allowed to eat on Erev Pesach, on the eve of Pesach, which would be next week on Friday during the day. And Achilat Matzah is a mitzvah that is part of the celebration, and a very important part of the celebration of Pesach. So as we get rid of the Chametz and prepare ourselves for Pesach with the Matzah, it should be also for us training to get rid of the influence of the Metzora, of the negative emotions, of the anger, of the haughtiness, and instead to have the Matzah, which is the humility. And in truth, humility is definitely connected to freedom of the person. Because when a person has a big ego, when a person is haughty, when a person is angry, it's not freedom. It's actually the exact opposite. He is a slave to those emotions. And holiday of Pesach is Man Cherutenu, is the time of our freedom. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.